Let's go on with our next discussion now. Nigeria's trade profile has been characterized by high imports and less exports, resulting in a trade imbalance as the country recorded a trade deficit of 3.023 trillion naira as at September 2021. This development has become a fundamental issue in Nigeria's trade profile as the country's overdependence on oil and gas has weakened the competitiveness of the non-oil economy. In a bid to improve the export market, the Central Bank of Nigeria in February released implementation guidelines for its newly created RT200 non-oil export proceeds repatriation rebate scheme towards enhancing the potential of Nigeria's non-oil sector to become a major source of foreign exchange earnings and the driver of economic growth. Well, joining me live from our Abuja studios to shed more light on this is the Professor of Capital Markets. He's also the President of the Association of Capital Markets Academics of Nigeria, Professor Uche Uwaleke. Prof, it's good to see you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tolu. It's indeed my pleasure.
Prof, let me start this way. A lot of efforts now by the central bank to reduce our dependence on imports. But on the other hand, we see business people, importers, and some exporters, even at the ports, complaining of some policy flip-flops coming from both sides, particularly central bank kind of intervening in some trade issues. What is your reaction to this?
Yeah, I think these are the issues that should actually concern every Nigerian, particularly the politicians. And that's why I don't feel happy when I hear a politician, for example, somebody seeking an elective office saying, you vote for me, or I am the candidate because because I am the person that will wrestle power from the party in power, or I am the person that will ensure that the party in power retains power. So that shouldn't be the issue. The issue should be, the question you asked me, one of them, how do we ensure that we have a diversified economy? How do we ensure that we can promote non-exports, for example, given our over-reliance on a particular product? Yeah, of course, the challenges we are having at the ports is of course that's major. Some people say that it takes an average of 21 days, for example, to move. You're moving goods from China to Apapa Wharf, for example. It takes 21 days, and to take them from Apapa Wharf to maybe somewhere like Ojota will now take you more than a month. I mean, how do we encourage investments in that kind of situation? So it's a major challenge, which is why we need to, as a matter of urgency, decongest that area. Must it be through Lagos ports? We have other ports in the country. A businessman, for example, who is based in Onitsha should use the ports around instead of importing from Lagos and then having to move all the goods to Onitsha with all the associated costs and risks. So the point you made about the port thing is valid, and that's why if you look at the RT200 program of the central bank, the Race to $200 billion program of the central bank, it has a component that has to do with making it easier for people to export, through alternative routes, if you like. So, except that is fixed, we'll continue to have this problem with exports.
Now, the RT200 FX program is one of many. We know the I&E window to also try and improve exports and all of that. Now, in your assessment, I want you to do a little bit of assessing the positives of these initiatives instituted by the Apex Bank. Are we getting enough? There was a time you get 5 naira or how much for $1 if you for diaspora funding and all of that. Has this helped in any way? Let's be a little practical, Prof.
Yes, we are facing a two-pronged challenge. The first one, of course, is how to reduce imports on the one hand, and the other one is how to promote exports. So you have two policies that are in contention. One of them is the import substitution strategy, which the central bank tries to support. Using, for example, the 41 products that the central bank is stopping from assessing forex. That's if you like, an import substitution, strategy support, because that's meant to conserve forex. And of course, on the part of stimulating forex, the central bank, over time introduced the Naira for dollar policy, and we understand that policy has led to increase in the inflows using CBN data from an average of $6 million a week to over $90 million per week. I think that's some improvement, and I also think that the ROT 200 program, which is a program that is meant to last over a period of 5 years, spread over a period of 5 years, if it's well implemented, it's something that the central bank thinks will bring about on an annual basis $200 billion inflows into the economy. And you can imagine what that can do to external reserves. You can imagine what that can do to exchange rate. Tolu, as you know, exchange rate largely is a function of demand and supply. The more the pressure on the forex markets, of course, you should expect that the naira will weaken and exchange rate will go up. And of course, if you have we don't have sufficient supply, you also have the same outcome. And unfortunately for us in Nigeria, especially in the last 10 years or so, we have always had this huge mismatch, between demand and supply of forex. And unfortunately, again, we have been unable to diversify our export base. We still rely on just crude oil for over 90% of forex. And then to make matters worse, the demand hasn't reduced. I was looking at some CBN data, recently, that food imports, for example, is still in the region of $54 billion, or the import bill, generally $54 billion. Although it has come down from a height of $67 billion, as of 2014. And of course, the import bill came down largely on account of some of the measures, demand management strategies the central bank introduced, one of which is what I mentioned earlier, trying to ensure that for products that can be produced there in Nigeria, the central bank is denying important access to forex. And to me, that stands to reason. We should, as much as possible, try to produce them here locally, produce what we eat, and eat what we produce. That is one policy that we should, continue to encourage. And in the area of exports, it's also important that the non-oil exports are given prominence. One of the things I think should happen, very quickly, if we are serious about promoting exports, is to recapitalize the Nexim Bank, the Nigerian Export and Import Bank. If you look at, if you compare Nexim Bank with peers, either in India, Indonesia, and elsewhere, you will find that the Nexim Bank in Nigeria is not in a position to really finance exports with capital base of just about $400 million. You compare that to, the ones that I mentioned that are in excess of $1 billion. So we need to recapitalize the, Exim Bank to put it in a position to really finance exports. In addition to removing also some of the bottlenecks that we talked about earlier, the ports too, is something we have talked about here. Something has to be done about that. Possibly, decentralizing and developing the ports, other ports we have in other regions of the, of the country. So it's about import substitution. Yes, it's also about export promotion. These two can, go together. Can be pursued side by side. And the central bank, to be honest, to be fair to the bank, central bank has done quite a lot in the area of, enabling exports in Nigeria. It's important that those efforts are scaled up, including the aspect of ensuring that for those products we are even self-sufficient in the in their production. Take wheat, for example. Why is it that today the cost of bread is or the price of bread is is going up? Is because we are even if you remove what is happening in Russia, Ukraine, the bulk of our imports, doesn't come from Russia. Unlike countries like Sudan and Ethiopia, that depend on Russia. The bulk of our imports, come from USA. And why should we, as a country, be importing as much as 5 million metric tons of wheat, and we are only able to produce just 1%, of that? And this is a country that has the capacity to even produce enough for the West African, sub-region. Recently, I listened to, I think, a speech by the central bank governor. He was represented, in that occasion, somewhere in Jigawa State, talking about doubling the production of wheat from 150,000 hectares to 300,000 hectares, in the next farming season. Okay, that's an improvement, but that's still very small, compared to the supply-demand gap in wheat production. Tolu, as you know, the central bank has done quite a lot in the area of rice production and even maize, particularly rice production. But we should get to a point where, we produce these things in sufficient quantity that we can also begin to export to, other countries, particularly, African countries, taking advantage of the African continental free trade, area. So we have that potential. I was looking at the data from the World Data Center recently and trading economics, comparing Nigeria and Ukraine. Ukraine, for example, is described as the bread basket of Europe. And this is a country that has just about 60 million hectares of farmland with 42 million hectares cultivable. Nigeria has 92 million hectares of farmland using the FAO data, and with about 34 million hectares, cultivable land. So we have, in terms of size, we are bigger than Ukraine, population, farmland, even land mass, but cultivable area, we are smaller. And even the type of farming that we do is not as mechanized as what they have in Ukraine. So we need to give attention to some of these issues. Sometime in 2020, we read that the government was borrowing $1.2 billion for agric mechanization. I remember that was the word, agric mechanization. It was then said that the government was intending to set up tractor servicing centers in 632 local government areas of this country with that money that was going to be borrowed. So we need to have updates on the implementation of some of these things, some of these programs and policies, to be able to at least track them. So until we mechanize agriculture, until we have we measure up again in terms of tractor per square kilometer. It is said, for example, that Nigeria just has 7 tractors per 100 square kilometer, whereas the world standard is 127 tractors per 100 square kilometer. Kenya has 27 tractors per 100 square meter. Okay, so why should we be backwards in terms of mechanized agriculture? And until we get it right in mechanized agriculture, we can't encourage the youth to come into agriculture, to be able to produce enough for even exports, something that will, of course, impact positively on our foreign exchange. And tied to that, Tolu, let me quickly mention that it's important that we challenge our research institutes, we challenge our universities of agriculture, colleges of agriculture in this country, to be able to do researches and produce these things. We challenge them to ensure that we have we are self-sufficient in the production of wheat, maize, and some of these major products that constitute the bulk of foreign exchange, that we expend. We spend as much as $2 billion every year using CBN data on wheat imports. Okay, this is something that we can save if we are producing, for example, enough here locally. And this is something our universities can help us achieve, especially in the area of finding solutions to low yield. Why do we have to have low yield in rice, in wheat, in some of these products when we have research institutes, when we have universities for agriculture? So funding of these universities, funding of these institutions should be based on their performance, should be based on their output. Ditto for universities of technology and colleges of technology. So we need to produce these things, not only for ourselves in Nigeria, but to a point where too we can also export. If you permit me, let me also add this, that recently we saw videos of an electric car manufactured by a team of researchers, lecturers and students from Federal Polytechnic Nekede, somewhere in Owerri there. Okay, such kinds of efforts, should be encouraged. Okay, should be funded. If we can have those things, produced in mass, of course, you can be sure we'll save forex, a lot of foreign exchange, importing some of the cars, that we import. So I think it's a holistic thing, and for me, our politicians should have these things as the main issues they should be campaigning on in this political season. So I would like to see, for example, somebody contesting for the position of the president to say, these are the things that I will do. These are my plans to ensure that we have a diversified economy away from oil, something we have been talking about since 1999.
Hello, Prof.
When we return to civilian administration.
Prof, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, great, Prof, great. Interesting, great stuff there. At least you're able to answer 2 questions, almost 3 in one. But as we move on and almost finally, Prof, you talked on wheat, which is something I also wanted to mention. CBN is saying in the next planting season, we should double hectares. We've seen this with maize and rice, the rice pyramids and all of this. Cotton, textile, a creative industry, see what is happening with the National Theatre and all of that. But some are saying that the CBN could be overwhelmed with all of this. Are they getting enough support from the other side to actualize all of this? Because the objective of all of this is inclusive growth, which we are yet to achieve as a country.
Yes, absolutely. Of course, monetary policies and fiscal policies, should be synchronized. Even though some of these actions of the central bank, may not be clearly situated within monetary policy purview, but they are actions that are also in line with the mandate of the central bank, the development mandate of the central bank. Central bank also has, in addition to price stability, responsibility to also support economic growth, which in my view is what the bank has been doing. The bank has been intervening in a power sector, for example. You mentioned it, creative industry, the cotton, and textile sector, the agri-value chain, SMEs, and of course the health sector, particularly, following COVID. So the central bank, as the banker to the government, as a lender of last resort, is expected to support the government, in implementing the government plans. But I also agree that these efforts by the central bank should also be done in conjunction with the fiscal authority. So the fiscal authority should be carried along. By that I mean relevant ministries, should also be carried along. If you are intervening, for example, in the agri space, the Ministry of Agri should be carried along, so that we don't have duplications. So I think the central bank is interventions. They are necessary. You also find that happening in other climes. It's not just in Nigeria. For us, it's particularly important that the central bank, intervenes to support growth. If you observed, especially during the COVID time, the efforts of the fiscal authorities were complemented by that of the central bank, and that's why we saw also the crisis.
All right there, Professor Uche Uwaleke. We're about wrapping up, and technology is already showing us that it's time to go. Thank you so much, Prof, for making us understand this very important topic and making sense of it. We really do appreciate your time. Professor Uche Uwaleke is a professor of capital market and is also the president of the Association of Capital Market Academics of Nigeria. Thank you so much for your time.